Welcome to Movies That Matter, the podcast about recent films going above and beyond the call the box office returns to boldly explore a social issue affecting people's lives. I'm Stacy Moore.
I'm Nicole Finari.
And this week we thought we might overanalyze the latest Disney animated feature, Zootopia. Determined to prove herself, Officer Judy Hopps, the first bunny on Zootopia's police force, jumps at the chance to crack her first case, even if it means partnering with scam artist Fox Nick Wilde to solve the mystery. Stars Jennifer Goodwin as Judy. Jennifer Goodwin being from...
Once Upon a Time.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's the show?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I haven't watched that. She's in that?
Yeah.
Is she a princess or something?
I believe she's Snow White.
You're kidding!
Yeah.
She would make such a good Snow White. And that was my favorite character, because that was the one people told me I looked like when I was a little girl. Let's see. Jennifer Goodwin. And Jason Bateman as Nick, the fox. Jason Bateman. Love him.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of my favorites. And let's see, featuring appearances by Idris Elba, Jenny Slate, Bonnie Hunt, J.K. Simmons, Octavia Spencer, and, of course, my favorite cameo by Shakira as pop diva Gazelle. I really liked she sings an anthem at the end and everything. But I thought that was cute. So there's a lot to unpack here. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you say? I was really surprised by everything, all the themes sort of explored.
Yes, a lot. Basically discrimination, but from many, many different angles and perspectives.
Right. Like, it was very complicated.
Mm-hmm.
So there were a few times when I thought it was going to take a very tried and true road. For instance, when she leaves her hometown, goes to the big city, and we're approaching the metropolis, I thought, okay, here's the typical New York City sort of parody. We're going to see all the usual jokes. But it wasn't. It wasn't New York. It was just more of like your typical globalized metropolitan center that you see in countries around the world, right? It could have been Bangkok. It could have been Sydney. It could have been London. It could have been, it was just the thing being that there were all these different types of people, mammals, all living sort of in a symbiotic, very harmonized, is that a proper word?
Harmonized.
Sort of lifestyle together, even though they're all so different. Like, it was sort of a multicultural, or maybe a kind of, although it gets messy. I was going to say that it was an example of multiculturalism operating the way it's, ideally meant to, but then I guess we learned that it's not all clean, that it's actually quite messy.
Right. So there's a lot of different ways that, we're going to talk about the movie, but just from the pure animation sense, the delight of the movie is definitely the world building of Zootopia.
Absolutely.
To fit all of these different sized mammals. So you have all these visuals about, you're on a train, you have a giant door that a hippo is going to fit through, and then this little tiny door for a mouse to fit through, and that's pervasive in the film. Kudos to the animators and the art direction on creating this world.
Fantastic.
So just much fun to look at visually.
Absolutely. I loved watching her go from, because she's a bunny, typically she's the smallest one in the room, but then at one point she goes through Little Rodentia, which was adorable, and she's running through this section of town that's dedicated to, or predominantly inhabited by very small little mice, dormice, and she's basically Godzilla going through these, knocking over buildings, trying not to step on people, trying not to step on one particular mouse is very reminiscent of Snooki. Yeah. Am I right in saying that? But
yes.
More lovable,
yes.
Probably. And then she comes around later. But in any case, I thought I loved the train ride into town. And she pulls out her iPod. I thought it was all the great sort of references to everyday life. Like, they tried to make it as normal as they possibly could to juxtapose with the fact that it was inhabited by all these random animals which was a very surreal kind of aspect to it. So it's like that juxtaposition of, you know, there's a giraffe walking by, there's a gorilla walking by, but then they're using iPads.
Agreed. Yeah, it is a more, in fact, modern world than ours in certain ways, than technologically. And I did find myself thinking at one point in the movie when she, after a very long stretch where there's no rest period, flips on the flashlight on her phone, which clearly looks like an iPhone, and me thinking, wow, she still has battery life on that. This must be a better future.
Right, yeah, absolutely. And I guess, so it is, it was sort of idealized towards the beginning, right? Like everything works, everyone's sort of moving about the city in very symbiotic ways, like no one's getting in each other's way despite like how different they are. And then after a while, the kinks start to show, right? So I guess, I don't know how much we want to get into the actual events, but there's just a few things, like she witnesses a couple crimes going on. She is relegated to parking maid duty, even though she graduated top in her class at the police academy. And then, of course, 14, I guess the premise of the movie, 14 mammals go missing, and no one can find them. And that's the case she really wants, but because of her, I guess, stature as a bunny, she's not given the sort of the choice case to work on. Everyone else in the precinct, right, gets to go out and work on it but her, and it's all like rhinos and gorillas and these huge sort of animals. So she's, I guess that's supposed to represent, right, the sort of racial discrimination in the workplace.
Yeah, so I think, you know, you can sort of divide with, again, many offshoots along the way, which I think is the strength of the movie. They show how prejudice works in a couple different ways, although I do want to bring up in a couple places where I think the movie failed. But, so the first half of the movie and what you think it's going to be about is her overcoming discrimination as this small, furry bunny trying to make it as a cop. And then... Can I bring up the cute line about it's okay when bunnies call each other
cute, but when someone else does it, it's a little offensive, which I think is one of the great lines.
I honestly thought if I could, you know, when we get to the cultural influence part of the podcast, that is going to, that one line in and of itself, I think is what makes this film, because I thought at the time hearing it as an adult, for people who haven't seen the movie yet, she walks into the precinct, the person at sort of dispatch is a big cheetah creature.
Yeah, but overweight, right?
Yeah. And says, "Oh, you're so cute." And she just pauses, very matter-of-factly, in a very friendly way, says, "Oh, you probably didn't know this. It's okay for a bunny to call another bunny cute, but it's not okay for someone who's not a bunny." And I thought, what a great, simple, matter-of-fact handling of a situation that we often find ourselves in and are often at a loss for words because we're afraid of making somebody uncomfortable. We don't know what to say. And she just demonstrates for kids and for adults, oh, no issue, no worry. This is how you handle that situation. And I thought, if there's nothing else good in this film, like, I'm just glad that every kid who saw this got a lesson and how to have that conversation.
Absolutely. And then I guess, but then she also, as you mentioned, has her sort of white guilt when she's dealing with, you know, interacting with Nick, this fox. Like when she first meets him, she assumes, like, he looks shifty-eyed, right? Intentionally, for the movie's purpose anyway. She follows him into a store where he's just entered, and he is ostensibly simply trying to buy a snow cone or something for his kid. And she goes through this moment of white guilt where she's, oh my God, I can't believe I thought he was trying to do something unsavory. She, at one point, she tries to help him out. It goes above and beyond, like pays for the snow cone, totally patronizing, right?
Right.
Calls him articulate, which was brilliant. And he actually says out loud, like, oh, it's so nice to meet someone not patronizing, such as yourself. I really appreciate that. And then basically hoses her.
Yeah. So I think that then gets to the second half of the movie and the second point of discrimination, which is then you get into the whole discrimination against predators and, so where you think this is going to be a movie about Judy overcoming her odds as a cute bunny and making it as a cop, in fact, the script flips entirely when we have to contend with the fact that Judy is very prejudiced against predator animals and
who are feared by the prey, the other sort of half of Zootopian society.
Well, and as they say quite pointedly, 90% of Zootopia is prey and only 10% is predator, which those statistics were not random. I have to
really? How
yes.
so?
I think
just to make them a minority.
Like 10% of the American population is black. As
is black.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't think it's not. That doesn't encompass all minorities, but that's about. Usually it's higher in urban areas, but we'll let that go.
Sure. And I think as when we get to that point, when we get to the point in the movie where she's, becoming familiar with Nick and, starting to work with him, and then, of course, everything we've mentioned about her own experiences with discrimination, I thought it was going to be a straight-up racism allegory. And I thought, okay, I've got a handle on this. There's big animals, there's small animals, there's predator, there's prey. This is a racism allegory. But it becomes, I want to say, I feel like there was a strong Islamophobia current running through this. So there was a lot to do with, as it moves along with, there are 14 mammals missing from Zootopia. Judy Hopps decides, she, with some help from the assistant mayor, right, who was also a smaller animal, and voiced by Jenny Slate, to great effect, I thought.
Yeah.
Did such a great job as this lamb. Her name is Assistant Mayor Bellwether, I think. Okay, so the assistant to the mayor is this small prey animal that really sort of kind of gives Judy some power up at City Hall. So she's able to kind of leverage that power to get on this case that she wants to be on. But she needs Nick's help because he was the most recent witness of the most recent missing animal, right? Oh, and all the mammals that are missing are coincidentally predators, which is, as we just mentioned, against the usual, what would be probability-wise, only 10% are predators, and they're all predators. So she's got to start finding out what happened to these folks, and they solve the case. They find the missing mammals. They've all gone savage, which I thought was a beautiful choice of words. It's just so delightfully like neo-imperialist, just a really nasty word, right, to apply. But they've all they've lost these particular 14 mammals have all lost their sort of anthropomorphized human characters and have just turned into ravenous, kind of insentient animals again. And so it becomes this. So when they find them all and realize that this has happened, Judy gives a statement at a press conference and is asked quite overtly, what did all these animals have in common? And she says, well, they were all predators and they all went savage. And it might have something to do with their DNA, with their biology. At which point, Nick, who has been supporting her, the two of them have become like best buds at this point. But then just a beautiful odd couple, buddy cop sort of relationship. His face just goes dark, right? And he walks out, and the city falls apart. Basically, right? The city just, prey are trying to protect their kids from predators. Predators are being kicked out of their jobs. The nice guy at dispatch is sent down to the basement.
Chubby cheetah,
right? And the one that could not hurt anyone, even if he wanted to, is sent down to the basement, and they're protests held by pop diva Gazelle, gets a lot of coverage for, that to, speak out against all of this terrible sort of reactionary, fear-mongering kind of movement against predators who have not done anything wrong, who have been living quite, they've been cohabitating quite, well with, for all this time in Zootopia with the rest of the citizens. And it seemed to me way more reminiscent of sort of the, Donald Trump's remarks about, there's, one guy in California, one guy and his wife in California go, and there's a term that people use that is so parallel to savage. They went radical. They were radicalized, right? Mm-hmm. And we don't know how it happens. We just know that at some point he was just a nice, American contributor to society, and just one day or over time he became radicalized and he became dangerous and he lashed out and he hurt people. And what does that mean? And how can we prevent people from becoming radicalized? And it's always Muslims, or is it always Muslims, or how does it happen? And then Trump and his followers all saying, well, we just got to keep them out of the country, and then people, other people having protests similar to Gazelle's are saying no, that's not right. And so that all it was just not about race anymore. It was about something even more timely than that.
I mean, I think you can read a lot of different things into it. For me, the racial component was the strongest, especially the use of the word savage, as you've pointed out, often frequently levied against black people and throughout history, and now often in coded ways that aren't savage, or biology, becomes a flashpoint word.
Genetically predisposed.
Yeah, and so, in the sense that just any black teenager wearing a hoodie looks like a predator,
right?
To any person who sees them, regardless of what they're doing or what the scenario is. It just becomes, many people have become incapable of seeing anything else. And I did think it was interesting that a couple of days ago the news broke about George Zimmerman.
Oh my God. Right.
This is again I'm going to call it Stacy face.
Sorry, yeah.
Stacy face of hands over eyes.
Just full on, cannot handle the world right now, going to retreat behind my hands.
I mean, this literally, I read the headline and I felt sick to my stomach.
Right.
I thought, for both that he would put the gun up and that I knew for a fact people would
bid on it.
The
only delightful development being that so many people created fake accounts in protest and hiked up the bidding. The highest
that's great.
Bidder, right? The highest bidder being for $65 million from a racist McShooty face, which was excellent. I think the second highest bidder was, I can't remember now, but it was the name of a 12-year-old black boy who was killed by a police officer within the past year.
Okay.
And they bid on his behalf.
One of the many.
Right. Can't even keep them straight anymore. So with, just on the heels of that news piece, it gives Zootopia even more heft, even more depth. Yeah, there's just a lot going on. There's a lot going on in that movie.
There is. Yeah, so many things. There's gender discrimination, there's a whiff of that with Judy being a bunny, but also being female. Mm-hmm. And, it really is very all-encompassing in terms of, first, like you said, what you can read into it, and then second, in terms of how the discriminated one day become the discriminators the next.
Sure.
That the situation is just layered and complex, which for a kids' movie struck me as quite a lot to pack in there.
That's a good point. How much are we expecting kids to be able to deal with these themes, these moral dilemmas that these folks are going through? Maybe maybe if they're not ready for it, it goes over their head and it's fine. But I don't know. God, I'm trying to think. When I was 6, would I have been able to sort of unpack what was happening to Judy and Nick as I was watching this movie? I don't know. But maybe I would have just thought, oh, wow, look at all the cute animals. It just could have been entertaining in that way, and I wouldn't have needed to delve into those things. I don't know.
I mean, I think to a certain extent, whether you recognize the allegory as an allegory, or you just keep getting hammered with the lesson of, everyone has their own prejudices, as popularized by many, check your privilege. I think kids can hear that message, and Judy's message very strongly throughout the film, and then at her speech at the end is, just try to be a good person,
Right.
Go out, decide what being a good person is, and go out there and do that thing to be a good person. Mm-hmm. And for me, I wanted to ask you, there are plenty of movies out there for kids that are just pure entertainment. This one was obviously a moralizing one, and there's quite a subgenre of moralizing kids movies, trying to teach kids lessons. And I'm a fan of moralizing kids movies. Like, done well, I think they're a good idea. There was one that I noticed, I didn't know if you noticed more, there was one glaring misstep in this movie about discrimination.
What was that?
So, early in the movie, you meet a minor character who is the first fox that Judy encounters, who is a big, stupid bully, and given a southern accent.
He's a redneck.
Given a southern accent. And that, to me, was, in a movie about prejudice and discrimination, can we stop portraying people with southern accents as stupid? Like, it's
such
done
a cheap joke.
so often, in so many ways, and come on, you just made a whole movie about how this is wrong.
I felt very prickly about that as well. Yeah, I agreed. And I was trying to think, like, okay, when they bring him back, we meet him again when he's older. Judy meets him again. She doesn't have a scar on her face, but earlier in the movie, he scratches her across the face and leaves like visible sort of abrasions, which colors her ideas of foxes when she meets Nick and moves to the city and meets him. And then she goes home later, meets this character again, this redneck fox, I guess. And he has apparently reformed, is the idea, right? He's become a baker. He's it's almost implied that he's been maybe seeing a professional and working, or maybe at least reading self-help books, and has worked out his sort of inner rage that he says himself he was, misdirecting towards people in his life, and he apologizes to her, and so I liked what they were going for. I liked that they were
but
like,
there's even still a crack at that second part about him, like, not knowing a word. I can't remember it now, but some sort of crack about
was it like
he's
a big
not
word
that
or
smart.
something? Oh, okay.
And I never had this prejudice against Southerners and didn't realize it was code until a Southerner said, no, I don't have a Southern accent, because it's always coded as stupid, and forced me to pay attention. And it's not okay. Like, I just, yeah, I mean, I was glad for the reform arc, but this him still being not that bright is there, and I was frustrated.
It is sort of, the country, the self-styled country population, culture, at least in the United States, is, I feel like, the last acceptable dumping ground for stereotypes. Like, a lot of people, at least in mainstream culture or urban culture, feel completely comfortable just really just lobbing them all into one category and just labeling the whole thing, stupid. They're all just ignorant, backward, have a dumb accent, whatever. And it really is. It's unfair. It's unfair, but it's like that last acceptable one that people are, I feel like, having a harder time kind of moving past.
Yeah, I think that's
out of.
I do think that's true, and in fact that part is even in Zootopia. Like at one point, Nick just tears Judy down for being some bunny from the sticks, and her family probably owns a carrot farm, which they actually do.
They do indeed own a carrot farm, yeah. Oh, he totally reads her up and down. Like when he first meets her, he just basically goes, "Let me guess," and just reads out her whole life story, and she's like, "How did you know all that?" I thought Jason Bateman was great.
I thought all the voice actors were good.
Great.
I thought I knew immediately that the otter was Octavia Spencer because
Did
that
you?
otter looked like Octavia Spencer. Like,
I did not.
I recognized her voice, but I also thought they've got kind of, because she has sort of a wide mouth, and
Sure.
I like the way they like drew that otter. She's the only one I thought looked like her.
And those like big, round, beautiful eyes that she has that are just so yeah, that was sort of that played in.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then sort of Jennifer Goodwin's kind of like, doll-faced cuteness is worked into Judy Hopps' character as well.
Yes.
And just like I do want to again mention the animation was, God, so exquisite.
Very.
So exquisite. There were points when they would make an expression, say, like I guess Nick the fox is generally, throughout the movie, he has one expression, and it's that like sort of half-lidded side smile, like very sly kind of I know something you don't expression. But when that breaks, like his face is so expressive, it felt real for a second. Like so when she blackmails him for tax evasion, and his sort of like his very overly confident, expression cracks for a second, and his eyes go wide, and you see him like working out the math of like what will happen to him if he doesn't do her, doesn't help her out. And I laughed out loud in the theater just at that. But all the characters had like just these very. It's gotten eerie now.
Yeah, and there were some good action sequences. And I will say, in terms of all the very heavy-duty things that we've talked about, because that's what this podcast is about.
Sure.
But I actually was sort of brought along on the little mystery of where all these animals disappeared to. Like, it was paced well. I was sort of invested in them following the clues.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think it is an enjoyable movie and it's not so bogged down and moralizing that it forgets to entertain.
Sure. Yeah, there is definitely. And there's all the little jokes along the way. Like the, oh my God, the DMV.
Yeah.
The DMV run entirely by sloths. Okay, so this made me think of this movie. The jokes are not, I wouldn't call them original. Like, they're not like, oh, this is a whole new brand of comedy. They were very, classic jokes, but they saw them through 100%. So in the case of the sloths of the DMV, it's this very almost vaudevillian joke of, oh, look, we need information from this guy fast, but he's a sloth, so he's moving slowly. You would think that would get really old, but they see it through to the very end, and even though it takes 7 minutes, I was laughing the whole time. But it's not a terribly sophisticated gag.
It's not, but yeah, again, the animation of the slow-mo expressions that creep across the sloth face and then just getting more and more and more in just such slow increments is to die for funny. I agree with you. Far and away the funniest part of the movie. And also, as an incredibly impatient person, Judy's just absolute inability to deal with somebody moving that slowly. And she keeps finishing his sentences and trying to give him the next bit of information.
Yep, we get it. Right. Yeah, so can I just have that number now? And he's like, 1, 1 second. Yeah, it just works. They dedicate themselves, right? They dedicate themselves to the bit, and so it works. But I guess the only other thing I want to mention is from a feminist reading. I am generally pleased as punch anytime a protagonist is female for no reason, and that's what we had in this case, right? With Officer Judy Hopps, she didn't the whole movie would have worked, and would have worked more traditionally if she had been male, and she and Nick had the buddy cop relationship. But she was small, say. It would have worked. They just made her female because why not? Because half the Earth's population is female, so why not have just a female protagonist for no reason? And I always appreciate that.
I do too. And actually, speaking of the buddy cop movie aspect of it, the thing that I appreciated was that she was female, Nick was male. They are the buddies, and it's a buddy cop movie. So I get very frustrated with what I refer to as yucky love stuff.
Yes.
I do not.
Gratuitous love story.
I will, yes, I will defend a rom-com till my dying day.
Absolutely.
But when I see an action movie, that there's no need for, a love plot line, is what I call yucky love stuff, and I really appreciated they kept the Nick and Judy relationship as friends, as partners, as buddies, with actually a lot of emotion. There's a scene where she cries. Actually, that's one of my favorite parts of the movies, too, because she cries. She's allowed to be emotional, vulnerable, female, and it is not held against her.
She's not shamed.
She's not shamed. She's not shamed at all for crying. It's just a part of friendship, and you kind of see it through with that person. And I thought that was another really great moment of acceptance in this movie.
That's a great point. The acceptance of, I am feeling something right now. So sorry. Sorry to encroach upon you with my feeling something. There was none of that. It was just, she's she just tearfully, was apologizing for something that she had felt really bad about, and she cried, and that was that. It was okay.
Right. He didn't accuse her of emotional manipulation, which is another way that can go. It was just okay, you're crying. That's what you need to do for this moment. I can accept that. And no one has to think less of you for crying. It was just brilliantly done, and they kept the yucky love stuff out of it. They kept them supportive, emotional friends, and nothing more. I was so happy.
Right. I thought it was conducted beautifully. It really was. I have to say, from start to finish, with the couple of, exceptions that we've talked about, it was very nearly a flawless movie.
Very nearly.
It was just one of the best that I've seen in a while. Top 30th grossing film of all time.
Good.
Yeah.
I hadn't known that.
Right. It's made, the last time I checked, it's pulled in nearly $1 billion.
Wow.
Worldwide. So it's the top grossing movie of this year, and then 30th overall. So
more than Star Wars?
No. Well,
this year.
Of this year, I guess so. I mean, $1 billion's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of money. It's a whole lot of money.
And that's what you come to this podcast for, right? There, nuggets of wisdom. $1 billion is, in fact, a lot of money.
Stacy's take on $1 billion. I'm going to say it's a lot. With that said, how much impact will Zootopia have on our culture? I guess I'll go over the scale one more time. Using a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being it changes nothing, and 10 being the world we once knew was gone forever. What do you think?
I feel that because this is a kids movie, that I want to rate it pretty highly. 10, no, it didn't change the world forever, but I definitely want to put it over 5. I'm going to hope for, a 6 or 7 because kids saw this movie, and hopefully you are really getting the right audience to, again, learn very simple things of ways to handle discrimination in the moment in a way that everybody can deal with and move on from.
Right.
To think about the ways that they are discriminated against, and then in turn think about how they discriminate against others. You know, I think it being a children's movie really bumps up its potential to influence things.
I hear you. Yeah, and the aspect of, or the suggestion that it's okay to make mistakes. So if you do, you know, wind up patronizing someone or, you know, holding them responsible for a stereotype that you've got ingrained in yourself, but you realize your mistake, that's totally fine. Mm-hmm. You recognize it and you try to do better next time. Yeah, it's a great lesson for kids. I'm going to say 5 or 6 for sure. And I think, like you said, the fact that it's a children's audience, I think bumps the number up that high. When Frozen came out and I heard little boys singing Let It Go, is when I first realized this new generation is going to grow up thinking that it's not a big deal that there was a movie about 2 sisters, you know, that they were the heroes, and that's, you know, fine and not anything special or out of the ordinary. And because he is growing up with those are his first messages, his first images of what a hero is, of what a protagonist looks like, that's going to have more impact. And so, yeah, I think you're right. With kids watching this movie, it's going to go a lot farther than, say, me watching it.
Exactly.
Like, I can intellectualize what I saw and go, oh, yeah, I should be a more accepting person. But it's not going to be quite as effective as, you know, a 6-year-old watching it. And the fact that it was all over the planet, too.
Right.
There was, when I went to look for public reaction online and on Twitter, I saw nothing but positive comments. It was all, you know, from, you know, folks in Brazil, folks in Japan, everyone all over the world just loved this movie, which is why the revenue was so high, I presume. But yeah, I want to say it'll have a moderate impact that we'll probably start seeing in roughly 15 to 20 years, right? It'll start, you know, cropping up, which will be nice.
History will bear us out.
That's right. You want to be on the right side of history. Okay, do we have any recommendations?
I do.
Sweet.
So, I feel like on the last podcast, I went back catalog. So, I'm going to do the same on this one. So, backstory on me. I was very, very lucky to be living abroad in South America at the time when Shakira's second album, Ciega Sorda Muda, was the most popular pop song in that entire world.
Great song.
That song is so unbelievably phenomenal.
So good.
So my 2 recommendations this week are that you go ahead and check out Shakira's first two on a label, first 2 albums, Pies Descalzos and Ciega Sorda Muda, entirely in Spanish. Very socially relevant in terms of Pies Descalzos actually has a good song about abortion.
Whoa. Okay.
But musically, sonically, both of those albums really explore all the different musical traditions across Latin America, incorporating elements of, you know, she's from Colombia, like native cumbia, to Ciega Sorda Muda, which is very much, has a mariachi band in it.
Right.
From Mexico, Caribbean rhythms, just really sonically explores and integrates so much of Latin American rhythms and sonic elements. Is
Ojos Así on either of those?
Ojos Así is on there. Again, another departure on that album, which draws on her background. She's half Lebanese, hence the name Shakira. So if you have not heard Shakira's early Spanish work, you are missing out.
Yeah, I feel sorry for you.
And I am
rectify that.
Yes, I am someone who is absolutely the most sort of hipster snobby alternative music person that you can find. And I defy anyone to not appreciate the genius of Shakira's pop music.
Or just try listening to it and not dancing around your living room. You can't do it.
Can't be done.
Not to ojos así. Nope.
Not to, again, mine, not to say sort of, not to estoy aquí, which was her breakout hit.
Oh, yeah.
So I go back and become new Shakira fans. Hips Don't Lie is possibly like the worst thing that I've heard her make.
That is but a pale shadow,
right,
of ojos así. And Sierra sort of with a great recommendation. I don't have one.
Oh no!
This week. Let me think back.
Do you have like unrecommendations?
Unrecommended, like don't watch,
don't go see
something. No, I don't want to be unkind. Don't want to be unkind.
Positive only on movies that matter.
No, screw it. I just recently, I may be the last remaining Netflix mail-in DVD subscriber.
You are not, because you are sitting next to somebody who is
my God.
See, this is how you know we care about movies.
That's right.
Because I'm still getting the discs, because some things are not available on streaming.
Is that right? Well, yeah, of course. Of course, like the more popular ones are not. So, I recently watched R.I.P.D.
Okay.
It's really awful. It stars Ryan Reynolds and, is it Jeff Bridges as cops that have passed on to the other side and are still like crime fighting against like, I don't know, like ghosts, like criminal ghosts, and it looked kind of cute from the trailer. It looked like it might be similar to Men in Black, and I realized halfway into it that it was essentially trying to be Men in Black and just failing, like, every step of the way. Just awful, awful, awful. Like, they're going after these guys who are trying to not move on to the afterlife because they know they're going to go to hell. So they're squatting in downtown Boston. And
as you do after you die. And they're one of their ways of, like, sort of sniffing them out and is to give them Indian food, and the Indian food like reveals that they're actually it was incomprehensible from beginning to end. Like, not adorable, not funny. Rule number 1 of science fiction for when we come to this: careful world building.
Absolutely.
Like, if you can't make it all hang together,
start from scratch.
Yeah, the movie. Oh, the Justin Timberlake Time
Overtime?
What was that? What it was called?
I think so.
I'm looking it up.
Where nobody, like the rich people don't age.
You pay to like not age past 25. Right. That universe, that entire movie fails. Everything about that movie would have been different if there were cell phones.
It all would have fallen apart.
Right, because
if they could text each other.
Yeah, like, the plot literally hinges on the fact that someone has to use a payphone.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Movies That Matter. If you did, please take a second to leave a review on iTunes and recommend it to your friends, leave comments, rate us, etc. You can follow me at Snow White Pitch Black, spelled phonetically. And remember, movies matter, and so do you. We'll see you next time.